This is it.
Hello. If you have not seen my last video, then it don't matter, because this one I'm just pretty much trying my best to explain the COD zombie lore. Well, the ultimis one, not the current premise one, because I'm just going to explain the COD WAW all the way up to Black Ops 2. Well, in a simple way anyway. Before time began, there is these two beings, Dr. Monty and Shadow Man. The two fought until Dr. Monty banished Shadow Man and his apothecants to the shadow, or dark ether. Then, but before that, they released Element 115 into a Japanese territory of Shinonuma, and the Japanese were able to research it until a German facility known by Group 935 took over the project and took Element 115 with them to study. So they took Element 115 to a German facility known as Der Lies, or the Giant, and they studied it to make their soldiers stronger, essentially super soldiers. Unfortunately, it created the undead, but that didn't stop them from testing them out. And there is radios around Der Lies explaining the testing, such as Dr. Max's trying to communicate with his zombie, telling him to stand down, but it ignored his commands and it tried to kill him, but soldiers nearby were able to save Dr. Max's. So the outbreak began when a truck was loaded with undead soldiers, transferring them to the Giant, but unfortunately it got destroyed by something, and making the zombies release and scatter across the area. Thus, Nocturne Toten happened. 4 Marine soldiers held out as long as they can, but in the end they perished. But amongst the German people, there was a spy among them, known as Peter McCain. Peter McCain was spying on them, and was in Verrucht. He got compromised and had to get out of there, but in doing so he lost his hand in the process. Then Verrucht happened. Ultimis, Tank Dempsey, and 3 other Marines were sent to Verrucht to rescue Peter McCain, but found no traces of him other than his hand and his communications left behind. However, only Tank Dempsey made it out alive. The rest of his crew died. But then Tank Dempsey, along with a few other people, got captured into Der Lies and testing them by using Element 115. Amongst them was Richtofen, who was the one testing them. He was testing them with using Element 115, an elemental rock sent by the apothecants. He uses Element 115 to see what it can do on them, but it caused side effects of losing some of their memories, meaning when they woke up, they didn't know who they were other than their names and skill. So they had to work with Richtofen to quote-unquote save the world from the undead. So they used a teleporter to get the stuff Richtofen needed. But before that, he and Max's weren't really getting along well. So Richtofen worked behind Dr. Max's back and did a few stuff of his own, like a teleporter and stuff. He went to Shangri-La, one of the maps in Black Ops, when the teleporter was seemingly working. So he felt confident enough that he decided to test it on himself. He went into the teleporter and it teleported him to the space station on the moon. From there he found an MPD, and when he touched it, his mind was filled with voices of something, presumably Dr. Monty or Shadow Man. He went back to Earth a little different than normal, a little more insane because of the voices telling him what to do. So, when Richtofen, Tank Dempsey, Takio, and Nikolai were going around the place, they didn't know he had voices in his head besides him saying it himself. So they just ignored it. But shit went to hell when they went to the moon to get Samantha out of there. Now, but how did Samantha get to the moon, you may ask? Well, at one of the experiments of teleporting when Rick Toffin was crazy, they were testing Fluffy, Samantha's dog, who had puppies in her, in a teleporter. It worked somewhat, but she didn't came back for a while. When she did came back, she came back as a hellhound. And Samantha was freaking out and she ran after her. But Max's held her back, saying that's no longer Fluffy. But Samantha didn't care and just went to teleport her as Dr. Max was chasing after her. When they were in there, Rick Toffin closed the door and he said the following: "Goodbye, Dr. Max." Then he pressed a button teleporting both. Samantha went to the moon and went inside the MPD, controlling zombies. Max went somewhere else and told Samantha to kill Rick Toffin by any means. And he died. With his dying breath, Samantha agreed, and she sent out zombies after them to target Rick Toffin and the others. Back with Tank and Takio and the others, they went to the moon. And when they went to the moon, it was pretty hectic for them considering they're fighting zombies in space. They finally located Samantha in the MPD. They got her out somewhat, but at a cost. Rick Toffin and Samantha switched places, meaning Samantha was in Rick Toffin's body and Rick Toffin was in Samantha's, meaning he controlled zombies. And then he launched 3 nukes, very powerful nukes at Earth, causing Black Ops 2 to start. In Black Ops 2, nothing much, besides 4 random survivors who are called Victus Crew, and it's Marlton, Stuhlinger, Russman, and Misty. They met at Transit together when Misty and Marlton were fighting zombies together, and then a bus pulled up and Stuhlinger was like, "Hey, get in." So then Stuhlinger, being part of the flesh, which means they eat flesh as like a last resort, because of him eating flesh, he was able to hear Rick Toffin in his head. And when he heard Rick Toffin, he assumed he could lead them to salvation, the sanctuary. But the others didn't believe him because they thought he was crazy because of him hearing a German scientist. That's just crazy. But they still follow him anyway because at some point he does sound legit. So they go around Transit in the bus that's being controlled by Ted to do what Rick Toffin needs. After doing so, they went over to Die Rise by teleporting there with Rick Toffin's help. And since they're stuck in a cycle, when they die, they just come back where they started. They went to Die Rise, a high city place where they're jumping from building to building. So they did Rick Toffin what he needed to do. Then they went to Barry, an underground old western thing somehow in good condition. And then this is a point where you can pick 2 sides, the Max's ending or the Rick Toffin ending. It's up to you. If you wanted the Dr. Max's ending, he would control the MPD and control the zombies, and he could finally see Samantha again, making the zombies' eyes orange again. If you went with Rick Toffin's side, he would banish Dr. Maxis somewhere to dark ether, and he would control Stuhlinger again because he can finally breathe and do stuff. That's the ultimis story from What Up War to Black Ops 2. If we're going to talk about the current one, it's going to be too long and too confusing, so I'm just going to end it there. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully I got this right. But I'm expecting a few mess ups here and there. Farewell.